Bye. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Conservation. A word we tend to forget about until it's too late. Throughout history, we've heard this word used most often when we have depleted a resource to dangerous levels, or when we have been faced with disaster and have no way of knowing when the thing we are conserving will be replaced. But why is that? When I look at the Oxford definition for the word conservation, it is defined as the prevention of wasteful use of a resource. If conservation is the prevention of wasteful use, why, as a society, do we wait for many of our resources to be virtually gone before we decide to save them? When asked the question, why is conservation so important? You don't have to look far for your answer. The USDA says it's for the protection, preservation, management, or restoration of natural environments and the ecological communities that inhabit them. Conservation is generally held to include the management of human use of natural resources for current public benefit and sustainable social and economic utilization. Why isn't conservation approached this way? I personally think we should be protecting our soil with all of the energy that we possess. But who am I? I am Bryn Woods from the Longview FFA chapter. Ever since I was a little girl, I've always loved the springtime because it brought rain, which in turn would bring snails. I would look under rocks, in the grass, in the mud, and would always try and keep a sharp eye out for the slimy little creatures. I'm definitely not someone most people would think of as a snail enthusiast, but there's something about those slimy little mollusks I find fascinating. Unfortunately, I don't see them as near as often as I did as a little girl. They are almost virtually gone. The creek behind my house, that used to be the source of the beautiful little creatures, has completely changed over the past few years. This is more than likely because of the new housing development that replaced a once thriving wooded area my adventures used to take me, full of wildlife, beautiful plants, and lots of snails. It scares me to think that someday I may not see my favorite little animals anymore, and I may have to tell my children stories of the cute, delicate creatures. The only snails they may know may be the ones seen through a historical document. I sit on my porch and think about the things that I can do, and the changes I can make that may foster an environment that supports a healthy population for snails. The question I keep asking myself is, if it can happen to the snails, could it ever happen to us? And the answer is yes. As a species ourselves, we need to keep the environment around us alive. I realize that only through conservation will we be able to foster an environment that not only supports the snails, but also us as humans. Now, as I began my research into why I'm seeing less and less snails each year, I continued to watch my quiet subdivision become surrounded by shopping malls and apartment complexes. Many researchers start out with the question, why? So that's where I began. I asked the question, why am I not seeing these fascinating creatures? That's when I discovered that snails are considered to be an indicator species. The University of Washington defines indicator species as species which can provide information on ecological changes and give early warning signals regarding ecosystem processes and site-specific conditions due to their sensitive reactions to them. I discovered that the density at which we see snails in a riparian zone could indicate the area's health. Put simply, the more snails we see, the healthier the land is, which means there's something majorly wrong going on around us. Unfortunately, my story is so similar to others around us. Whether it be the disappearance of waterfowl in the Katy Prairie, the disappearance of quail and turkeys in East Texas, or plant and fish species becoming endangered in and around our rivers, lakes, and streams, we are taking a drastic toll on our environment. Our population is growing rapidly, especially in the state of Texas. In the year 2023 alone, nearly 500,000 people flooded into the state of Texas wanting a better life. A life that would not exist without three basic necessities: food, water, and shelter. All three things the environment around you provides. Many people are so far removed from conservation that they tend to forget or have never even learned that the food on their dinner table was grown by a farmer, sometimes in their own communities. Our governments and communities have been so focused on growth and profits that we've forgotten to consider the future of the areas we are conquering over daily to build lavish houses with manicured yards. For example, in the state of Texas, our farming working land has diminished rapidly in recent years. In just the 27 years since 1999, our state has seen over 1.2 million acres of working land converted into commercial and residential land. That is over 650 acres of land being lost daily that was once used to sustain our healthy environments. Conservation is no longer a part of our culture. We take from our land and never consider what is truly being taken when we rip away our topsoil for commercial monocrop agriculture, when we fill our wetlands to build neighborhoods and shopping malls, and when we fill our water resources with toxins, without considering the living creatures that need that water to survive, including ourselves. The 32nd President of the United States and renowned conservationist, Franklin D. Roosevelt, said it best. We have become great because of the use of our lavish resources, but the time has come to inquire seriously, what will happen when the forests are gone? When the coal, the iron, the oil, and the gas are exhausted? When the soils have still further impoverished, washing into our streams, polluting our rivers, denuding our fields, and obstructing navigation? The growth and greatness our country has seen has come from the use of our vast resources. However, these resources are not inexhaustible. In the blink of an eye, our way of life, our comfortable climate, and our plentiful supply of food could all be gone. We have to continue to be advocates for the land. As agriculturalists, we are excellent at spreading knowledge about where our food and fiber comes from, but we often fail at spreading the word that our industry would be nothing without the soil and water that sustain it. If conservation isn't the forefront of all conversation regarding our community's growth, our communities will start to perish. We have to start looking at conservation as a prevention instead of a reaction, as life begins just beneath our feet. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
We're not seeing-
Oh, question, yeah. This one. Yeah, question.
We didn't ask questions in the prelims.
That's
so-
okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand.
Let's see, my first question is gonna be, so you talked about FDR and kind of like his original thought of conservation and preserving our natural resources. If you talked as an FFA member and agriculturist to current leaders in policy, politics, conservation, what is some things that you would note? What are important things that you think are important to speak up about at this board?
Yes, sir. I think that the most important thing is to advocate the youth about what is going on. I know that for me at Longview ISD, we actually have a school garden where we produce our own fruits and vegetables that go to our elementary, our middle school, and high schools in order to feed those students. And I think that that is a great way to get our students involved. I actually worked there over the summer, and I would got to be such a big part of that. And so I would definitely educate the youth on that. I know that might be difficult considering this is such a hot topic, but nobody really cares or knows about it. But I would definitely, go back to what FDR did, setting land aside and encourage them to do that and to just advocate for it and encourage the youth to do their own research and get involved with their communities about it for sure.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Great answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keely Clark, nice to meet you. Keely Clark,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Keely, what, for each?
Joshua FFA.
Joshua FFA?
Yes.
Whenever you're ready.
Yep.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm reporting live from Johnson County, Texas, known as Ground Zero for the state of disaster. Pastures have turned to poison, ranches to ruins. Authorities report lethal levels of pollution in these North Texas farm and grazing lands. Behind me, you will see mounds of fresh graves where 43 head of cattle were buried just this week. The culprit, you may ask, is known as forever chemical pollutants that have contaminated the soil, water, and air, not only these Texas agricultural lands, but in over 70 million acres across the United States. Hello, my name is Keely Clark, and today I will report the hidden truth about per and polyfluoroalkyl forever chemicals, or PFAS for short, and empower you with the information that every livestock producer needs to know. What exactly is PFAS? What are some consequences associated with use and exposure, and potential solutions and initiatives that are ongoing to reclaim Texas farm and grazing lands? The unfolding story about the PFAS contamination debacle in the southern part of Johnson County leads to the question, what exactly is PFAS? PFAS is considered a family of over 14,000 synthetic chemicals that have all shown evidence of lasting harmful effects on the environment, as well as human and agricultural health. Using carbon-fluorine bonds, PFAS chemicals are extremely resistant to breakdown within the natural environment and the human body, classifying them as forever chemicals. Since the 1940s, PFAS chemicals have been used in a wide variety of products, ranging from food packaging to paints, coatings, and even some cleaning products. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, PFAS enters the environment through the use of biosolids, which are chemically treated human waste that get turned into a nutrient-rich, cost-effective fertilizer. And according to Investigate Midwest, between the years 1986 and 2022, the prices of fertilizers and pesticides have increased 250%, leaving farmers with a motivation to find cheaper alternatives. What these farmers did not realize was that these biosolids were laden with PFAS chemicals, causing extensive contamination of the water, soil, and even the air. Now that you know what PFAS chemicals are, what are some consequences associated with use and exposure? You know, it seems as though livestock producers cannot catch a break. As if New World screwworms, water scarcity, and packing house monopolies aren't enough. Now, the fear of feeding hay or feedstuffs grown on PFAS-contaminated fields is plaguing livestock producers. Here's the story. On February 11, 2025, Johnson County, Texas was declared a state of disaster after a lawsuit was filed by 4 agricultural producers in Grandview, Texas, against Synagro-Tech, the manufacturer of Granulite sewage sludge-based fertilizer. According to the Texas Tribune, after neighbors applied the Granulite fertilizer, the lawsuit plaintiffs began to notice fish floating in ponds and tanks. Then, soon after, cattle died and several calves were born stillborn or with birth defects. Agricultural crops tested to have higher than allowed amounts of PFAS in pasture grasses, and even high amounts in hay crops. This is just one of the many cases involving families losing their livelihood to PFAS chemicals. Other reports have shown that PFAS chemicals can damage animals' reproductive abilities, immune systems, and can cause organ failure. But not only are they affecting livestock, they are also affecting wildlife and people. In a study published by the National Library of Medicine, approximately 97% of Americans have PFAS in their blood serum. PFAS chemicals have also been found in 45% of drinking water supplies across the United States, and according to Keck School of Medicine, contribute to more than 6,800 cancer cases each year. This is a problem on so many levels. With all of the negatives associated with environmental PFAS pollution, what can be done to restore agricultural resources? I have good news to report, as contaminated soil and water can be remediated by electrochemical oxidation treatment with 99% effectiveness. According to the Biology Insights publication, the main premise for this rescue procedure is to use an electric current to generate powerful oxidants directly into the contaminated soil or water, thus breaking down the dangerous carbon-fluorine bonds within the PFAS molecule into harmless chemicals. The most common and effective type of anode used during this process is the boron-doped diamond anode. By definition, an anode is basically the negative electrode responsible for breaking down the strong PFAS chemical bond. Although costly, these anodes offer high oxidation potential and have long lifespans. Electrochemical oxidation treatment is categorized as a destructive treatment, meaning that PFAS chemicals are destroyed during the process instead of just separated. And when electrochemical oxidation treatment is paired with a foam fractionation process, PFAS chemicals are separated and degraded with an even greater efficiency and effectiveness. Although remediation efforts are expensive, the United States Department of Agriculture launched a new regenerative pilot program just last month that will dedicate $700 million to focus on the restoration of America's natural resources. As a part of the Make America Healthy Again initiative launched in September 2025, this Farmers First initiative is one way that United States Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins is committed to the war on PFAS contamination. Today, you have been enlightened about what PFAS chemicals are, the problems and concerns associated with environmental PFAS contamination, and the use of electrochemical oxidation treatment to restore polluted soil and water. It is my hope that this information inspires agricultural producers to explore the source of fertilizers, hay, and feedstuffs to best ensure the health and well-being of both livestock and humans alike. And if faced with a known PFAS contamination, understanding remediation options and funding are available through the USDA's Regeneration Initiative. I will continue to report updates as more news becomes available. Until then, signing off from Johnson County, Texas, I am Keely Clark.
Great job, Dylan. And we're going to ask you two questions. First one being, so you say you're from Johnson County, talked about disasters in Johnson County. If you were to talk to farmers and ranchers in Johnson County about biosecurity, what are some like the most important measures that you would advise farmers and ranchers in Johnson County to implement on their farms?
Especially with the PFAS contamination, I would especially warn them against biosolids. Biosolids, you may not be the one to spread them on your pastures to try and fertilize. It may be your neighbor and you're just downstream. So it's not necessarily something you do. It's something you get your community involved in, warn them against the dangers, explain to them alternatives such as cow manure. That's a great fertilizer that is easily available. And that's just something that you would have to get your community involved in. It's not just something you do. One great way to make sure that it's not already on your property is to get it tested. There are a couple different kinds of tests. You can test your water and your soil through Measure Labs. Those are both $206. Or if you think it's in your environment, I would get your blood tested. You can do that through Quest Laboratories. They have Quest Laboratories all over the state. They have a normal blood test, which is about $315, and they have a plasma test that will go more in depth about what kinds of PFAS you have, how much is in your body, and how much is the regulated amount. That one runs a little more expensive, about $500.
So the PFAS you're saying affects the animals and stuff like that. But have they noticed like the ground that they put it on over a longer period of time, does it end up affecting like the grass that grows there? You know, maybe at first it's very good and then after a long time.
It does. So I've actually been in contact with one of our county commissioners. His name is Larry Woolley. He is over that in Johnson County, the dilemma, because he is trying to explain to the state why it's such a big deal to remove it. He decided that he would go out and actually examine this for himself. I have seen his research, and he said piles, whenever you have fertilizer, you pile it on your property before you spread it. This stuff was smoking like it was on fire. It was giving off odors that were not supposed to be giving off. So it's not just a long-term effect, short-term too. It's in the air, it smells horrible, it smokes, and then after a long period of time, they have noticed their crops aren't producing well enough. Those crops are contaminated. They don't react like a normal crop would.
Great job.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. What's your first and last name?
Lily Galt, Lilly Gault.
And where are you from?
I'm from Llano, Llano.
Whenever you're ready, stop.
The girl had just arrived home from school, and as she stepped through her front door, she felt a painful weight in her stomach, as if she had just swallowed a rock. She thought it must have been something that she ate. But after a few hours, the agonizing pain turned to vomiting and became unbearable. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be a one-time occurrence. In fact, this cycle of heaviness, pain, and sickness would happen after every meal for the next 3 months. Her doctors would have no explanation until a simple blood test revealed it all. Hey y'all, my name is Lily Galtz from the Llano FFA chapter, and this short story was my reality. You see, a year ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition known as celiac disease that affects 1 in every 100 people worldwide. The condition causes the protein gluten, which is commonly found in wheat, barley, and rye, to trigger an autoimmune response, causing intestinal damage. Its effects can have several complications such as malnutrition, anemia, infertility, and even cancer. And to top it all off, there is no known cure, meaning that the only treatment is a lifelong gluten-free diet that can be hard to adhere to. But imagine a world where celiacs could safely eat gluten without having to worry about the dangerous complications. This is where hypoimmunogenic gluten becomes the hero of our story. Hypoimmunogenic gluten refers to a form of gluten that scientists are trying to genetically modify in order to eliminate celiac's autoimmune response. Scientists are using the genetic technology known as CRISPR-Cas9 in order to target DNA sequences and utilize the Cas9 enzyme to cut at that specific location, allowing the genome to be modified. In gluten, the Cas9 enzyme is able to work like genetic scissors and essentially cut out the immunogenic peptides that cause celiacs to react. However, what makes this technology so remarkable is the precision that CRISPR has to offer. Unlike other genome modification methods, CRISPR has the potential to target the exact immunogenic DNA sequence while still preserving gluten structural characteristics. This means that celiacs could safely eat gluten while still maintaining the same texture, taste, and functionality as traditional gluten, which means that I could eat bread that doesn't fall apart when I touch it. From there, plant scientists are able to cultivate crops such as hypoimmunogenic wheat, allowing farmers to still support traditional agriculture while also benefiting the millions of consumers affected by celiac disease. Additionally, the benefits of hypoimmunogenic gluten and crops making it to the market could be completely life-changing, as it offers a solution to people like me who are constantly forced to monitor everything, eat. Imagine a world where we could sit down at a restaurant and order a pizza without hesitation, or eat a slice of birthday cake without having food anxiety about cross-contamination. For nearly 80 million people worldwide, this is still a distant dream. But hypoimmunogenic gluten takes us one step closer to making that dream a reality. It can improve quality of life for those with celiac disease or any gluten sensitivity, and can help alleviate the challenges of living gluten-free, which can be expensive and restrictive. Not only could hypoimmunogenic gluten provide dietary leniency, but it could also help reduce the social isolation that many celiacs experience. More often than not, we have to decline dinner invitations, bring our own food, or even skip meals altogether just to stay safe. But with a form of safe gluten on the market, we can fully participate in things like family cookouts, school events, or even Thanksgiving dinner. It can eliminate the fear of getting sick, the constant need to double-check food labels, and even that awkward conversation with your waiter about why you can't just pick the croutons off.
However, there are still some significant hurdles that hypoimmunogenic gluten must overcome before it can become a widely available food source. Most notably, hypoimmunogenic gluten is still in the research phase, meaning that more testing and development need to be done before it can be served on consumers' plates. These tests include ensuring their long-term safety and efficiency, monitoring their stability, and even understanding their environmental effects. Moreover, the public's perception plays a huge role in making hypoimmunogenic gluten a reality, as up to 46% of US consumers are still skeptical about genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. And while this is generally due to misinformation or even concerns about their long-term effects, it shows why it is crucial that we properly educate consumers and promote transparent communication so that the amazing benefits of these innovations can be fully understood and supported. So, now that we have the hero of our story, we can have a happy ending. Imagine that girl from earlier, now coming home to a meal with her family, where she can enjoy the same bread, pasta, and sauces as everyone else, without the texture or taste changing. With the average amount of celiac cases rising by 7.5% each year, this is a cause we can all get behind. And thankfully, we can support research being done by the National Institute of Agriculture Botany as they continue their development of hypoimmunogenic gluten and work towards implementing this innovation throughout the food industry. Because every person deserves a seat at every table. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one second, we're gonna ask you a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
All right. So my question is, so you talked about one of the negatives, or like one of the downsides of the hypoimmunogenic gluten being misinformation and public perception. From your personal experiences as well as your research from doing this competition and this speech, how do you plan on being a voice or an advocate for this solution to celiac disease?
I think that it is very important to do what I'm doing here today. To sit down and say, here are the facts, here's the problem, and here is a possible solution. I think it's really important for companies to have that scientific transparency also with its consumers so that we can understand just how the technology works and just how it goes through an immense amount of testing and research and development in order to ensure that it is a safe product, that is safe for the environment, it is safe for consumers to have within their diet. And so it is through advocating and through doing speeches and through educational presentations that we are able to properly educate our consumers and show them that genetically modified organisms are not a foe, but our friend. Thank you.
So with your research in this, have you seen any kind of a timeline on when any of this kind of progression is going to take place?
Yes, ma'am. So hypoimmunogenic gluten was originally an idea created by a company called Vitality in Massachusetts in about early 2017. Unfortunately, after COVID, the company did go out of business, but research was continued by the National Institute of Agriculture Botany in Cambridge. It's also being taken on by the University of Oregon, but within the next 7 to 20 years is when we should really start to see hypoimmunogenic gluten or hypoimmunogenics in general becoming a more feasible product. It was in 2021 that the Japanese company Sanitec Seed was able to successfully produce a breed of tomatoes using the CRISPR-Cas9 technology. These tomatoes are known as the Silicon Rouge high GABA tomatoes and contain high levels of gamma aminobutyric acid, which is believed to help aid in the relaxation and the lowering of blood pressure. And these tomatoes create an easy and efficient way for consumers to implement it into their diets as it contains up to 5 times more gamma aminobutyric acid. But what I truly find amazing about this innovation is that we were finally able to see a successful bridge between the CRISPR-Cas9 technology and traditional agriculture. And to me, that only provides hope that hypoimmunogenic gluten and hypoimmunogenics in general is something that is very, very close around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your first and last name and chapter?
Triton Ripple, Peaster, Fitchup. My number's 65.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
There are many exciting topics that students are talking about at school, like who got their cell phone taken away this week, what's President Trump doing with tariffs, who wrote the latest hit song, and what's up with the new kid's haircut. And believe it or not, the birds and the bees are also a popular topic in high school these days. But however interesting that might be, I'm not going to discuss how bees pollinate flowers. But I am going to share with you today the process of birds pollinating flowers. Hello, I'm Triton Ripple, and I'm a junior at Peaster High School, and I'm very involved in the FFA with livestock showing and leadership contests. But special to Parker County, we have a crop show that students compete in every summer. There, students like me raise their prized zucchini, potatoes, onions, and many other varieties of produce to see which student places at the top of their class. While my siblings and I don't always have the most success with the showing of animals, we always seem to have success with our vegetables. And in order for our crops to be successful, they have to be pollinated. While bees seem to get all the pollinating credit, the wind, ants, butterflies, and other insects get almost no credit at all. I'm here to tell you that birds are an amazing pollinator and can accomplish the process of pollination in more than one way. If you've ever listened to a heavy metal rock band or driven by a teenager with subwoofers who gladly share their music with you, then you know that sound is truly important. The powerful movement of sound that can move pollen is essential for plant reproduction. It involves the transfer of pollen from the male parts of the flower, or specifically the anthers, to the female reproductive organs called the pistil. The top of the pistil has an opening called a stigma that needs pollen basically dropped into the opening so that it can flow through the style and connect with the unfertilized eggs, which will in turn produce a fertilized seed, what we know as an embryo. It's covered by fruit or grain and sometimes just a seed coat. This process is essential for producing our food and for producing the next generation of seeds for planting. While this pollination with sound is important, you can have too much of a good thing. Moderation is key. Just like wearing too much cologne can be overbearing on your senses, there could be negative effects on your favorite plants if the volume or frequency of sound is too high. An effect that can be explained by showing the movement of the opening and closing of the stomata. The negative influence of a frequency which is too high could possibly be explained by using a technique known as shell resonance, which stimulates or inhibits the synthesis of proteins in plants. This happens when the same teenager with subwoofers moves in right next door to you. It's just too much of a good thing, or maybe a bad thing. One of the earliest studies of the effects of music on plants was conducted in 1962 by Dr. T.C. Sine, head of botany at Amelia University. He exposed balsam plants to classical music and found that their growth rates increased by 20% compared to a control group, along with a 72% increase in biomass. He then exposed crops to reggae music over loudspeakers and found that they yielded 25 to 60% more than the national average. Also, Margaret E. Collins and John E.K. Foreman at the University of Western Ontario in Canada conducted a research project that showed how the rate of growth of two different plant species was affected by sound varying frequencies. Beans and impatiens were selected because of their relatively fast growing rates. Ambient conditions were regulated by environmental chambers in which the plants were housed. The change in growth was monitored every 2 days for up to 28 days. Upon completion of the test, it was observed that optimum plant growth occurred whenever the plant was exposed to pure tones, in which the wavelength coincided with the average of major leaf dimensions. So play some music for your plants, or play a recording of high-pitched songbirds singing. You can even purchase DVDs by a company called Sonic Bloom that claims to boost plant growth immediately. The research done by Sonic Bloom's creator, Dan Carlson, who majored in horticulture at the University of Minnesota, found that various frequencies that were similar to early morning birds chirping help plants grow faster. On every leaf, there are thousands of small openings that allow leaves to breathe. These openings are called a stoma. These are less than 1/1000th of an inch across and allow for oxygen and water to pass out of the leaf or transpire so that other gases, notably carbon dioxide, can move in to be transformed by photosynthesis into sugars. Photomicrographs show plant stomata opened wider to Carlson's bird sound frequencies, while a Philips 505 scanning electron microscope showed substantially higher plant stomata density on the leaves. Well, it may sound a little too organic for mainstream America, but I enjoy hearing songbirds sing, and there's research to show that it can help as well. So why not give it a try? For ages, people have insisted that talking to your plants can help them grow. Sometimes I talk to myself, and oftentimes sing in the shower. So why not take things a step further and sing to my plants? I think you should give it a try as well. With you singing and birds chirping, your plants will in turn grow big and be healthy. Thank you.
So have you, with your vegetables you were talking about growing, is there anything specific you and your sisters do in using this technology with your plants?
So we haven't actually gotten the opportunity to do a controlled version of it because we don't have two different greenhouses that we can have these controlled variables the same in. But we go outside every day and we have our garden in our backyard that we hear these birds chirping in the garden. I would love to do a more controlled version, maybe at AgriScience Fair, where I could see the difference between these two different plants or different frequencies between the plants.
What has been the most exciting or surprising thing that you've found out in your research for this topic?
So the ERS, or Economic Research Services, led by the USDA, found that $18 million of agricultural profit in the United States each year comes from pollination alone. I just thought it was super interesting because this is a kind of alternative pollination.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. What's your first and last name?
Carly Anderson, and it's KarlyAnderson.
Perfect. And where are you from?
Pearland, Texas.
Whenever you'd like to start.
Sustainable agriculture is a slap in the face to producers. The dictionary definition of sustain is to maintain, but our goal should be beyond simply maintaining. As agriculturists, we should strive to constantly improve and evolve, not remain stagnant. Our goal should be to better help and prepare the current consumers and industry, as well as future generations. These are ideas presented in Brian and Darren Hefty's radio show at PhD. The Hefty brothers are successful farmers and seed producers, founding the prestigious Hefty Seed Company. With these achievements, they're greater known as two of the most influential row crop agronomists and soil science experts in the world. Howdy and good afternoon. My name is Carly Anderson and I'm from the Pearland FFA chapter. Today, I'd like to discuss with you about regenerative agriculture. Specifically, its practices that are providing for both our current and future generations while restoring soil health over time. We'll start by highlighting a major American event and how that would forever change production agriculture in the United States. Then, take a deep dive into what producers are doing now to create a healthier environment
while simultaneously producing enough product to feed those around us. To finish, we'll look at what it will take us as agriculturists to impart a modern-day agricultural revolution. Beginning in 1930, the Dust Bowl began to majorly change our industry, specifically how we farm. The Dust Bowl lasted for nearly a decade and caused a major loss of livestock, crops, and land. In the year 1935, the National Soil Conservation Service was created to fund and develop conservation programs that would ensure an event like this never happened again. To begin achieving this goal, they helped to move farmers onto more productive land and provide emergency relief, all while promoting soil conservation. Shortly after this, in 1994, they changed their name to what is now known as the Natural Resource Conservation Service, more commonly known as the NRCS. While a range of factors were in play when it came to the name change, the overall goal was that it may be known their services went beyond just soil and expanded across many areas of farming. Alongside this, it was that same year of 1994 that the long-lasting effects of the Dust Bowl were further combated with more federal funding for the USDA Farm Service Agency, whose main mission is to invest, improve, and expand agricultural operations by providing the resources to do so. And the most helpful resource proven to majorly impact the overall wants and needs of farms was regenerative farming. In simple terms, regenerative farming can be defined as farming practices explicitly implemented to combat climate change and promote biodiversity. To summarize, the NRCS and USDA not only served great purpose then, but paved the road for regenerative practices today. Over the summers of 2020 to 2024, both our state and our nation faced one of its largest droughts since 2012. That impact alone is enough for anyone to see that a change to end the climate crisis must be made. Through regenerative farming practices, such as cover cropping and reducing tillage, these changes are being made possible in ways like never before. A cover crop is a plant that has one or more benefits beyond harvesting, like slowing erosion, improving soil health, and increasing biodiversity. Another benefit is that cover crops are known to increase organic matter, which is a fraction of soil that has both plant and animal tissue. Water holding ability of organic particles is up to 400 times the normal holding of particles without. With all this, you may be asking yourselves, as great as it sounds, what does that have to do with helping to fight climate change or improve centuries of soil damage? As stated best in a 2024 USDA Farmers article, cover crops are making a difference through their ability to capture atmospheric carbon into our soil. This leads us to the next practice I'll be sharing with you, known as reducing tillage. Much like cover cropping, reducing tillage also increases soil health. When producers do till their land, they introduce more oxygen into the soil. In turn, that emits more carbon into our atmosphere, causing a loss of needed carbon from the soil. Not only this, but through mechanical tillage, there's other risks to keep in mind, including how even the fuel used for tilling can be found guilty of releasing excess carbon. These results are ones that we should be working directly against in order to reduce our impact on climate change, which is why the practice of reducing tillage is now more vital than ever. As our world becomes more technologically advanced, so are we, and so is our industry. Advancements in precision agriculture will play a major role in reducing the issues that I've discussed today. Variable rate technology, when it comes to spot spray applications, have already seen a 77% reduction in both pesticide and fertilizer usage over the last 5 years. Through this technology, producers are able to control and distribute pesticides, fertilizer, and other farm inputs in different amounts without having to go through their land multiple times or change farming equipment. And when producers are applying less pesticide, this leads to more money in their pockets and less possibilities for soil-borne contamination and eutrophication down the road. The issues present that regenerative farming combats are ones that have existed for centuries, and it's only through consistent use of these that we begin to see a change. As our industry continues to promote, advocate for, and implement these practices, we have a choice to make for ourselves. in order for us to be able to succeed as agriculturists, as both producers and consumers. Then it's time we ask ourselves if we're ready to move past sustaining and into changing. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to ask you a couple questions. My first one is, you talked about the NRCS and USDA and different policies that are in place to enhance regenerative farming. What are some of those conservation programs that you know of that are successful or impactful in continuing to conserve our farmland?
Absolutely. So I talk about the USDA and NRCS, and what's important to understand is that NRCS is just one of the several branches. USDA has a total of 137 independent agency branches, and while they're all for different things, whether that be a loan, it's helping you find a resource, they're all connecting farmers to agriculture and the resources that they need. However, I would say that NRCS, which I mentioned in my speech, is going to be the one that's doing the best for what I'm talking about, regenerative agriculture, and that's because NRCS actually has people that will come out to your land and they'll give you advice based off of what they're able to see. They're able to take in soil samples, look at and maybe you have animals on the property, and also what your long-term goals are. And so the NRCS and their policies to protect farmers to make sure that they have the resources to do so, and the way that they help with short and long-term is definitely one that is benefiting agriculture.
With your research, you gave some examples of some regenerative practices. Are there any that you came across that are new that maybe aren't fully implemented that they're looking at to start?
Absolutely. So we see that a lot specifically with the usage of AI, just because AI is so new and it's exploratory. However, we see a lot of farmers looking to possibly try things. A new product that we see is Infinity, and that's a nitrogen fertilizer, but specifically people are using it with AI drone sensors for that to go into their soil. And what those drone sensors are doing is making sure that you're receiving adequate amounts. And also if you have different plots of land or even different rows of land, and they all need a different amount, it's able to generate that different kind of concept. And so with that, we see a lot of producers being more hesitant to adopt it. The average age of an American farmer being 55 years of age or older, a lot of them are going to be hesitant because they didn't have access to AI, they didn't have access to the technologies. However, we do see AI being beneficial, and the more we experiment with it, the better results that we're continuing to see. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
How you doing?
Good. What's your first and last name?
Preston Moss. PRESTON MAASS.
And where are you from?
Elgin.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
As I walk into Minute Maid Park for any given game, I can't help but take in all of the sights and sounds. Before getting food, before getting my drink, and before even heading to my seat, I walk to the back of a section of seats and look at the field. There's no particular reason for it, perhaps to remind myself that I've come to church once again. Terry Schlater stated this in her article, Playing in the Dirt, keeping grounds at Minute Maid Park, from the expanse of the green grass to the perfection of the dirt. Baseball's church is indeed its field. Growing up playing baseball, I've got to experience this church and just how valuable it is to the game. The same can be said for those standing on the Augusta National Golf Club course who are competing in the Masters tournament. Very few understand how fun, but also challenging courses like these can be to play. And I, too, hope to be one of those few. And of course, let's not forget about those who are lucky enough to play on Lambeau Field. This is their church, a place that gives you the feeling that miracles can happen. So you may be asking yourself what all these three places have in common. And the answer is simple. They all have turf grass that must be maintained to be able to perform the necessary duties for their respective sports. Turf grass management plays a vital role in soil stabilization and upkeep of major sports fields. Most people may not understand how important the playing field is to the game, but we can all recall the 2023 Super Bowl. There, we're trying to enjoy the game and the much anticipated commercials, only to be more focused on the playing conditions of the field. As the biggest game of the season was being played, players were having to be concerned with the chance of being injured because of the field conditions. And unfortunately, the field conditions stole the headlines, and definitely not in the best way. For years, the NFL has been using the Tahoma 31 Bermuda grass, developed by Oklahoma State University. This variety has been chosen because of its cold and drought tolerance. It also repairs itself rapidly, making it look as damage never occurred. Now, this is the same type of grass that's been grown for most of the big games. So, what made 2023 so bad? And the answer is easy: maintenance. In order to have the best grass for Super Bowl Sunday, the growing process must begin 18 to 24 months in advance. Depending on the location of the game, the grass can be grown in 3 different states: Alabama, Georgia, or California. The grass is grown on a plastic base with very little soil or sand. This allows the roots to intertwine and strengthen. This also allows it to be transported and transplanted, where it is then cut into strips, rolled, wrapped, and trucked to its new location. Then it is put on a sliding or retractable tray that's rolled into place for the game. Once the grass arrives, it must have a lot of tender love and care. The grass will have its own blankets, diet, and rain tarps, just to mention a few. So, where did they go wrong in 2023? According to George Toma, also known as the Sodfather, the field was overwatered and did not get enough sun to dry out. Another issue was the lack of sanding that should have occurred weeks before the big game. The extra sanding would allow for more moisture to be drained from the roots, but the field was then covered with tarps to protect it, which made the roots start to rot. Even though the NFL agreed that the field surface met the required standards for the maintenance of natural surfaces. According to the league, the natural surface was tested throughout Super Bowl week and was somehow in compliance with all mandatory NFL practices. The controversy has started to spark the debate between natural and artificial turf. According to Dr. Calvin Hwang, a team doctor for Stanford University's football team and the San Jose Earthquake soccer team, there's always evolving technology, both with grass, but especially with artificial turf. He continues, while the newer turfs may be safer than the older generational turfs, throughout the years, my players played on grass, and it leads me to believe grass is safer. There are studies that suggest a higher rate of foot and ankle injuries that occur on artificial turf. Although artificial turf has a large price tag to install and set up, there's very little maintenance cost in the years to follow. There are many benefits to playing on natural, well-maintained grass fields. Grass fields allow for better impact absorption and there's less risk of skin injury. This will decrease the frequency and severity of contact impacts. Grass fields also maintain a natural ambient temperature, while artificial turf runs much hotter on the player's feet. Lastly, grass tends to improve athletic performance as players tend to feel more comfortable playing on the natural surface. And since I believe Texas A&M is one of the better colleges around, I think it's only right for me to talk about one of the most notable fields is Texas A&M's Kyle Field. This field is completely natural. And as we're watching the game, there's one person watching the player's feet. Nick McKenna. He's one of 300 certified sportsman managers in the country who serves as the assistant director of sports fields. Every inch of Kyle Field is scientifically engineered to produce the state-of-the-art Bermuda grass that covers the 74,000 foot square field. Since Kyle Field's renovation in 2015, Airfield's air drain agronomic natural turf drain system has played a vital role in the upkeep of the field. This is a sports field drain system that uses gravity to pull the water under the roots. According to McKenna, Kyle Field is designed from the ground up with significant weather in mind. We have the ability to control and manipulate those factors. One of the ways is through the use of sand. They have an 11-inch sand profile which lies beneath the grass, which was scientifically researched to ensure that particle size and sphericity were optimized for maximum water drainage or retention depending on weather. Kyle Field is designed to take on multiple inches of rain per hour without getting waterlogged. McKenna was asked how much rain would be too much, and he responded, "I haven't found that out yet, and I hope I never do, to be honest." Many people don't understand the science behind the field, but definitely understand the cosmetic appearance. In order for the field to keep its aesthetically appealing appearance, the field must be mowed 7 times a week, frequently watered, reseeded, and fertilized. All of this hard work helps keep Kyle Field and other major sports fields in a condition that is safe and allows the players to perform to the best of their abilities. While very few of us are professional athletes who are personally affected by turf grass on sports fields, many of us are sports fans who can appreciate the game, whether it be baseball, golf, or football is affected by this playing surface. When it functions as it should, we don't notice it and can be at peace in our church. But when something goes wrong, our whole church experience is ruined. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna ask you a couple questions. My name is Kyle and I went to A&M and I was named it for Kyle Field, so I love that. Oh, Kyle Field mentioned, I thought that was great. What is kind of the role of like herbicides and pesticides and additives of the natural grown grass that's used for sports?
So some of the ways that the herbicides and pesticides, I was actually researching this earlier, and some of the few ways that can affect that natural grown grass is it can actually make it weaker at the roots, and so that grass can actually tend to fall out and lose its stabilization faster. That's why turf management and ensuring that you have a strong soil is so vital to your turf grass, and also making sure you can use certain tools such as a clay tester to make sure you have the right firmness for your soil, the right fertilizer, and so forth. But herbicides and pesticides really play a vital role in ensuring you have a strong grass that stays connected at the roots and stays within the soil, but also can resist other things such as drought and cold tolerance as well.
So you had mentioned only 3 states for the grass for the Super Bowl. Why is only those 3 states? 'Cause I know they grow a lot of turf grass in Texas. So what's the difference?
So this might actually help answer one of those future questions, but some of the biggest ways is their climate and temperatures. Down kind of in the southeast of the US, it tends to be a little warmer, but also kind of rainier, more like a tropical kind of vibe. And so whenever you have that nice sunlight and that nice rain that comes in very commonly, you get a very nice, strong and thick grass. But you also sort of have that climate over there on the West Coast, over in California. And you were mentioned growing a lot of in Texas, but because of the many various climates in Texas, you can go from Houston that has that tropical climate like I'm talking about in the southeastern, or you can even go all the way up to the Panhandle that's more of kind of a colder drought area. You tend to kind of lose your strength there with growing these large amounts of turf for these sports fields whenever it's so diverse and you really don't have a good strong place to settle down, such as on the far west coast with that rain or in the southeast with the tropical climate.
That's all the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
You too. You're ready whenever you are.
Hey chat, can you help me solve the equation 3x squared minus 12x plus 5? It's getting late. I just need a little help with my homework. Hey chat, do you think I should break up with my boyfriend? I just want someone else's opinion. None of my friends are picking up. Hey chat, how do I prepare my ranch for a blizzard? Wait, it can't do everything. It doesn't know my farm like I do or everything I was taught by my father and grandfather. But what did it say? Last March, ChatGPT, an advanced artificial intelligence chatbot, became the world's most downloaded app. What's the easy solution to using your brain to solve hard problems? Just don't. Chat will do it for you. And soon, it will be doing much more than factoring equations. As much as we try to justify the ways we use it, it won't be long before this kind of technology seeps into agriculture. Indeed, it already has. But is it possible to continue feeding a hungry world without innovating our machines to the point of them thinking for us? Howdy, my name is McKenna Johnson from Brazos County 4-H, and today we will be exploring the pros and cons of artificial intelligence in agriculture, as well as how to continue using our brains without standing in the way of progress. To begin, what are the advantages of artificial intelligence? With 2% of America's population feeding everyone else, extra help is always needed. New technology innovations have the potential to help us run our operations smoother and more efficiently. For example, AI's predictive analytics are able to equip farmers to care for their crops like never before. According to BPM, Public Accounting and Advisory Forum, AI has begun to estimate crop yields using information like soil quality, weather patterns, and past yield data. It also analyzes market trends to predict prices and demand. This will help us to bridge the knowledge gap, as not every agriculturalist has broad scientific knowledge and research capabilities, but they do all have an iPhone. Additionally, AI automated machinery like autonomous tractors are on the rise. This will lead to more precision in farming and more efficient yield. The benefits apply to our livestock as well. The Indian Smart Dairy Monitoring System is able to use AI to detect signs of diseases like mastitis and ketosis through minor changes in routine in dairy cattle and sends notifications to farmers. Finally, Australia's new SwagBot guides cattle to the best grazing locations to avoid overgrazing and bad soil health. The developer explains that once the cattle are used to the robot, they just follow it around. These are just a few examples of the many ways that AI's data-driven decisions and robotic productivity can benefit us. Not to mention, many of these solutions are better for the environment, allowing us to rewrite the script to show that farmers do care about preserving our natural resources. We've always been focused on feeding the world. AI is equipping us to do that like never before. Second, what are the disadvantages to AI? Last summer, MIT's Media School released a study that showed that when compared to others, ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed in terms of communication and everyday behavior. If AI is costing our future farmers intelligence along with stray curiosity from the time they are in school, it could be harmful to the way they approach their careers. Lassane Bainbridge warned as early as 1983 in her paper Ironies of Automation that the more automated a machine becomes, the less humans practice, but the more important their role is when the system fails. The more we rely on AI, the less capable we become to problem solve and think of new ideas. Simply put, we get dumber. Additionally, large implementation costs are always a barrier for new technology. Because of this, we risk creating a digital divide in agriculture, further separating large operations who can afford new technology from family farms who can't. And control by the elite is always a scary thought. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we've always prided ourselves on working with our hands and using farmers' intuition to care for crops and livestock. However, according to Jad Jaber and Helmi Issa's paper, Unraveling the Unintended Consequences of AI in Agriculture, when it comes to ag, AI is most commonly used for decision making. The core issue with this is that both AI and agriculture are unpredictable in nature. The researchers warned that combining the two could lead to irreparable damage to an industry that both holds up the world and yet can be swayed by rogue forces of nature. Third, so how do we keep using our brains without letting ourselves get run over by progress? I think the first step is very simple. We must choose to think. Dopamine is the drug of this generation, and shortcuts are often chosen over genuine hard work. It is a common thread across dystopian fiction and imaginings of a robotic future that there are no books, no thinking for the individual. In a generation that longs to speak up and be different, AI is reducing us into people who are very much the same. If we are to continue to cling to our roots of hardworking, free American agriculture, we have to continue to challenge our own minds. Next, strive to learn. Don't just listen to AI's crop recommendations. Learn why it makes sense. If we use AI to help us discover instead of to help us check out, we will gain more knowledge instead of losing it. As our population grows and more land is lost, what we need are smarter systems. This means pushing ourselves, perhaps with the help of AI, to create something with ingenuity. Finally, it will do us well to remind ourselves of what AI cannot do. It cannot be passionate. It cannot provide for a family that it loves or follow in the footsteps of parents and grandparents. I cannot see the value in dumping the goats a bucket of feed while the sun sets. Because you cannot care for something that you don't really belong to or exist in. That privilege belongs to us, and it's our responsibility to be fully alive in it. We have now explored the pros and cons to artificial intelligence in agriculture, as well as how to continue using our brains without standing in the way of progress. At the end of the day, AI is meant to be our sidekick, equipped to do mundane tasks so that we can focus on better caring for people and getting food in their stomachs. It all comes down to careful decisiveness in what we choose to be run by technology and then what we keep classic, powered by our actual intelligence. Thank you.
So McKenna, how do we bridge the gap between our younger generation that are going to be more adaptive to this technology and these changes to those that are, grew up in the way that they used to do things their own self that are now being changed over to technology, such as our family's in the meat science industry. So my husband used to grade beef, and the way my son is now learning it is so different. And it's been hard for my husband to understand why a human's not doing the same thing he did 20 years ago. How do we bridge that gap and bring those that are currently in the industry along to these changes?
Yes, ma'am. So I think the most important thing to do from the start is fostering empathy and seeking to understand the other person's point of view. As I discussed in my speech, there's pros and cons to technology, and so it's not just black or white. So I grew up in a generation where I've always had access to technology. My grandparents haven't. But I think being able to look at their point of view and say, wow, there is so much value in this. There's value in the ways that you want to do things yourself. But there's also value in my generation wanting to be efficient and get things done and say, this is how we can feed the world quicker. So I think by having those conversations and then talking about that it's not supposed to take over everything. For example, it's on the rise right now. It's not super popular, but my family is doing some beta testing with Merck Animal Health. We run a large stocker cattle operation, and calves are prone to sickness, but they have ear tags that they're using, which are motion sensing, and they're able to detect signs of disease in the cattle before our cowboys are able to recognize it. So I think that's a great example of being able to work together with AI. The AI kind of pushes us ahead and gives us a jump on the problem, but then the cowboys still use their discernment and practical thinking to diagnose the calf and then treat it.
So you kind of answered what one of my questions is going to be is what kind of AI do you use in agriculture? So can you explain or expand on that a little bit more?
Yes, ma'am. So as I talked about in the speech, it is such a new thing right now that it's just not popular on the wide realm. There's nothing that's just commonplace across practices all across Texas. But like I mentioned, my family is experimenting with this. We've also experimented with drones and different kinds of temperature tracking ear tags, which are able to just help us get a jump start on what we're already doing. That is our goal. We never want people to ask me, when is AI going to replace all of our jobs? I don't believe that's possible because agriculture, just like every other industry, is fueled by the logical and emotional thinking of humans. And so we're just looking for ways. My family is always trying to be innovative with our practices, but looking, as those new AI innovations come out, how can we use this to help us get ahead and do what we're already doing? How can it help us feed the world better?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
What is your enlistment number?
30.
Okay.
Your heart beats fast and loud. Panic and fear are rushing through your body as you struggle to think straight. Your sense of you turn enough only for you to fully realize what's happening as you look at your friend lying in a critical position, suffering from a heart attack. You quickly dial 911, anxiously waiting an answer. Finally, someone's voice comes to the phone, and you tell them an emergency, just for them to respond with, "Sorry, our staff is busy right now. We will come by in a couple of hours." Your heart drops, because you know that in a couple of hours, it will be too late, and all hope is gone. Okay, now let's take a deep breath. And remember, this is not what would actually happen if you dialed 911 with such an important emergency. But what if this is exactly what would happen in the horse world? Imagine calling your vet in a panic to tell them your horse is coughing, just for them to respond with, "Sorry, all our staff is busy right now, and our equine vet's out of town." Or what if the closest veterinary clinic with an equine specialist was multiple hours away, and the chance of your horse surviving until then are slim to none? The sad reality of it all is the amount of large animal vets, specifically equine, has continued to decrease over the years, resulting in their high demand all across the United States. If these numbers keep dropping, our horses will be put at risk of receiving lower and less quality treatment. Prices of veterinary care will skyrocket, possibly becoming completely unaffordable for some horse owners. And of course, the stress and strain placed on the remaining veterinarians will be severe, and many will struggle to continue their practice. Hi, my name is Grace Fry, and I was born and raised on Rancho, Texas until I was 16 years old. So I witnessed firsthand just how important horses are to cattle operations, the agricultural industry, and of course, the Western lifestyle. And as a horse owner, I know how important it is to provide our horses with high quality care. So today, I want to talk about the need for more equine vets in the horse industry, especially in rural areas, how crucial their role is, how we can help encourage and inspire others, and provide our vets with a better and more sustainable lifestyle workload. First, let's look at some statistics. According to the American Association of Equine Practitioners, less than 6% of all vet school graduates enter into equine practice. And within 5 years, 50% of all those veterinarians either switch to a small animal practice or drop out of veterinary medicine altogether. There are many reasons why vets don't want to pursue or stop pursuing a career as an equine veterinarian. And one of the major reasons is high student loan debt. Equine vets often graduate with around $200,000 in student loan debts. And due to their lower starting salaries compared to that of a small animal practice, it is hard for them to repay their student loans. On top of the financial burden, equine veterinarians work long, demanding hours with frequent emergency calls. During my interview with Dr. Cliff Honnes, an equine specialist for over 42 years and owner and veterinarian at the Texas Equine Hospital in College Station, Texas, Dr. Honnes states that he is on call 24/7, has worked through many nights with no sleep at all, and a full workload ahead of him the next day. That type of work is definitely not for the faint of heart. Dr. Honnes and another well-respected and renowned veterinarian, Dr. John Janacek, both made the same very interesting point that most equine owners don't just go to the closest and most convenient vet clinic for their horse to receive medical treatment. These owners want the most experienced and educated vets working on their horses, and will travel many hours for them to receive high-quality care. Thus, these vets with strong reputations have even more stress and responsibility added to their workload. Now, I want to talk about some big steps and changes that vet schools and vet programs have made in order to help increase the amount of well-trained and well-educated vets in the horse industry. Texas A&M has developed the 2+2 program for the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, or DVM degree, where students spend their first 2 years at West Texas University before moving to the main Texas A&M campus for their final 2 years. This program provides early exposure to rural veterinary and livestock practice in the Panhandle, aiming to train more vets to serve in rural communities. While Texas Tech has recently developed a new school of veterinary medicine, with their curriculum specifically designed with a focus on rural and regional practices, with extensive hands-on training that allows the graduates to leave school better prepared and ready to embrace the full practice of their veterinary careers. There are also programs provided through the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, such as the Veterinary Science Certificate Program, that provides hands-on veterinary training for students ages 8 to 18 in 4-H clubs, schools, and homeschools, and eventually leads to veterinary assistant certification, after coursework, and apprenticeship. We also need to conquer the issue of high student loan debt for the graduates that are coming out of vet school and help provide our current vets with a more manageable workload. Financial aid for large animal veterinarians can be provided through federal, state, and private programs, with some of the top options being the Federal Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Program, state incentives such as the Texas Rural Veterinary Incentive Program, and specialty scholarships through groups such as the American Association of Equine Practitioners and the American Veterinary Medical Foundation. As far as providing our vets with more manageable workload, I believe that one of the best solutions is to reduce the burden of 24/7 on-call work duties by forming cooperatives with local neighboring practices. It is also extremely helpful to have skilled, well-trained assistants who can handle the smaller, less technical tasks while still reducing some of the mental and physical strain placed on the veterinarian. To further add to this solution, the U.S. Department of Agriculture recently launched the Rural Veterinary Action Plan, which contains some very useful ideas, such as enhancing veterinary grant programs, providing support plans for vets that wish to open up a practice in rural areas, and extra benefits such as tuition reimbursements for federal government veterinarians that are coming out of vet school. Horses have played an irreplaceable role in the Western world for hundreds of years, and as an advocate for the equine industry, I want that role to continue to stay alive for hundreds of years to come. And we simply cannot do that without our dedicated equine vets. Yes, the road ahead of us is long and hard, and no number of changes the equine industry will ever make becoming an equine veterinarian easy. What if we can help strive for changes and improvements we made in the equine veterinary work field in vet schools, no matter how small or unimportant those impacts may seem? It's a step closer towards every horse receiving the expert care it needs and every equine vet reaching, maintaining, and enjoying the career of their dreams. Thank you.
Okay, you mentioned the 2x2 program and course text program now kind of focusing on rural and regional vets. Since the implementation of those, has there been an increase in vet retention in the rural areas that you know of or aware of?
So I feel like right now we're kind of in that middle stage where a lot of our new veterinarians are still going to be in school because Tech recently developed their school in 2021, so they still have a lot of vets that are still being released. But there's definitely been an uphill slide because a lot of people get paid to work in rural areas. And they get their tuition paid and they get different scholarships to work in these specific rural areas that need that extra help. So I definitely think we are going to see an increase in the next few years. I just think it's going to be a very slow process because we're also seeing a lot of vets that are feeling the burnout and the stress and the overload of work that are dropping out and quitting their practice.
How, during this transition period, again, hopeful with the involvement with Tech's new vet school that's focused on rural and things like that, how do we, I guess, mitigate the situation we're in now, where it is harder for ranchers to get a vet that's available within a close proximity for emergency purposes? I know we faced that several times with our animals and was basically told that we would have to wait, and so ended up in loss of life. So where do we go and how do we encourage the younger youth that are looking at vet school, which a lot of times is coming out of our more urban areas because of the small animal, that lifestyle of being involved with our dogs and cats, but we're losing those that want to be involved in ranching probably because of that 24/7 mentality where you don't have that with the small animals.
Yes. So I feel like a big thing, especially as a horse owner, when you live an hour away from your closest veterinarian, is one, educate yourself on how to treat small, minor problems. Like say your horse has a scrape, or maybe he's showing signs of a common cold, etc. Know what to treat them with, know how much medicine to give them, and know how to treat their wounds, etc. Another big thing is making sure you have a vet that can come to you. Because a lot of times, putting your horse that's in a serious medical situation and condition, taking and trailering them hours away or even just an hour can be so stressful. And maybe they might lose their life on the way there or be in an even more critical position because you were taking them. So when we lived, hour, 2 hour away from civilization and a veterinarian, we would have a traveling vet that we could contact pretty quickly. And yes, it's hard to get them sometimes, but just making sure you have those contacts, even someone who lives in the area that may know a veterinarian that lives closer than maybe the 2-hour away clinic. So just making sure you have those contacts and know how to treat small, minor issues.
I think that's it.
Thank you so much.
Grace. Okay, we're ready whenever you are.
There is nothing that makes me happier than knowing my family is making steak for my birthday dinner, or we're grilling hamburgers on the 4th of July, or when I can smell the prime rib cooking on Christmas Day. When asked, what's for dinner? My family is quick to respond beef, regardless of the occasion. But beyond the flavor and the memories, beef stands as the undisputed king of high-quality protein. But today, in a world obsessed with protein powders, bars, and the latest dieting trends, I wonder, is the protein craze an opportunity for beef, or a threat that could dethrone it? America is in the grip of a protein phenomenon, and the question is no longer, do people want protein? It's, will they choose beef to get it? Open up your Instagram feed, and the protein message shouts even louder. Top nutrition influencers promote high-protein oatmeal, snack boxes, and macro-friendly meal preps, each post optimized for viral sharing. Flip to the New York Times or browse the Washington Post, and you'll read glowing coverage on the latest protein boom, an analysis of the superfood era that's turned ordinary breakfast into a muscle-building ritual. It's everywhere, this race to optimize, quantify, and level up through protein. But where is beef, the original powerhouse, cornerstone of rural Texas, in this story? And who stands to lose when we confuse true nutrition with a number on a wrapper? Hi, I'm Cameron Skaggs, a Texas Youth Livestock Ambassador who races and exhibits heifers, steers, and barrows at state livestock shows. For decades, animal agriculture has ridden the wave of protein-centered messaging. And as America chases its latest protein obsession, I believe marketing beef story has never been more urgent. According to the 2025 International Food Information Council Spotlight Survey, America's protein hype is undeniably real. 71% of Americans say they are actively trying to eat more protein, with 1/3 having increased their intake in just the past year. For the 3rd year running, high-protein diets are the top eating trend, ahead of keto, low-carb, or paleo. Yet, beneath the obsession, there's confusion. 8 in 10 Americans either do not know or are unsure about how much protein they actually need. This disconnect begs a crucial question. Is the American protein craze really about health, or about something else entirely? At first glance, this should be good news for beef. Demand for protein is booming, and beef delivers it in abundance. However, when protein becomes the buzzword, we risk losing the very distinctions that make beef superior. Protein powders may promise 25 grams per scoop. They miss the mark on essential micronutrients only beef delivers naturally. The number of products claiming high protein quadrupled between 2013 and 2024. Even dairy farming has shifted, as whey, once a byproduct, now becomes fuel for modern America's anxious, muscle-chasing consumers. But the experts quietly push back. Most Americans are already eating 35 to 55% more protein than official recommendations. Your body cannot bank excess protein. That protein bar or shake above your daily needs actually gets converted to fuel or stored as fat. The real health issue isn't a lack of protein, but confusion between enough protein and as much as possible. This momentum, however, tells only part of the story. In 2025, the global protein supplement market is worth nearly $29 billion and on track to double in a decade. Plant-based powders now comprise more than 2/3 of all new products. Yet despite flashy marketing, peer-reviewed studies show that both plant and animal proteins support muscle health. Beef has a pronounced advantage in building and preserving lean muscle mass, especially in youth, athletes, and adults. The result? For many,
The protein supplement race is about belief and branding as much as nutrition. If we are going to keep beef at the head of the table, we have to do more than defend it. We have to market its story in a way that no powder, bar, or plant patty ever could. Beef is more than just protein per serving. It is rich in minerals, vitamins, and a spectrum of essential amino acids, the very molecules your body needs to build, repair, and thrive. There is real risk in reducing food to a number, a phenomenon academic experts call nutritionism. When we define health by single metrics, carbs, fats, or now grams of protein, we do two things. We invite marketers to overtake science, and we risk losing the wisdom that comes from eating whole, recognizable foods. Just because a protein-fortified ice cream or meatless burger packs 25 grams per serving does not make it equal to beef. Choosing protein is not about seeking the biggest number. So the better question is, where does your protein come from? As a Texas 4-H livestock ambassador, I've seen firsthand how today's ranchers are not stuck in the past. We are innovating, genetically selecting for better marbling, embracing sustainable grazing, and pioneering technology of transparency in the food chain. But the best science does not matter if we lose the food conversation to slick marketing and relentless influencers. This isn't just about nutrition labels. It's about livelihoods. It's about whether the next generation will see beef as a responsibly raised, nutrient-dense food or just another protein option in a crowded marketplace. We cannot surrender our plates or our futures to numbed appetites and empty trends. Let us reclaim beef's story, not simply as a source of protein, but as a living bond between farm and family, nourishment and nature. By telling beef's story, beef can not only survive the protein craze, but it can inspire the next generation to promote beef for its quality, honesty, and community at every meal. So I challenge you, be guardians of beef's legacy. Because when America asks, what's for dinner? Our answer should always be the same. A celebration of beef, rich in flavor, deep in heritage, and unrivaled in quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I had a question for you, and then you answered it as soon as I finished writing it. So, good job there. I was going to ask why you felt like beef or animal protein was more advantageous than plant protein, but you did an excellent job answering that.
Thank you.
So I guess my next question is, what are some things that you think that the industry can do or that food brands or retailers can do to help consumers choose beef versus a different type of protein?
I think something that the industry can do, and one thing that I've been following really recently, is actually Texas Beef Council's program called the Medical Office Outreach, where they actually go into medical offices in Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, metropolitan areas in Texas, and prioritize talking to doctors about how beef can benefit their patients in a healthy diet. And I think that that is such an important initiative because so many people, when you look at where they get their dietary recommendations from, it's from their doctors. And I think that targeting doctors and understanding how, making sure they know the true nutritional value of beef can be a great way to really reach consumers. Another thing that I've been following that I really enjoy from Beef It's What's for Dinner is their program where they have celebrities show how you can make beef in a fun, easy way for any kind of meal. And I think that's something that's really important to connect with audiences from all different ages. Because, like you guys know, much of my generation likes being online and is on Instagram. And while they may be promoted by protein companies about how plant-based powders can implement and protect them when they're looking to build muscle, I think if we are in that market as well as people who are beef cattle producers, we can reach them at that same place and really show how beef can be a part of a healthy diet.
Thank you.
As beef industry and those that have been involved, we are very traditional in set in our ways. How does the beef industry as a whole, how do we embrace the marketing trend, which I get is a trend, but now we've got things such as even ice cream that is now promoting high protein. Beef, it's always been there, but we just in that industry have not figured out how to get on the trend bandwagon, so to speak. How would you propose that the industry look at doing that?
I think a great way our industry could really look to promote it in a way that so many of these new protein powders are promoting to consumers, which is basically a get muscular quick scheme where you can have a lot of protein powder and eat all this, and then you'll get muscular and have more protein and be healthy because of it. And I think that as beef cattle producers, what we don't promote enough is how beef is truly a complete protein and how it has all the amino acids, and how at the same time, what has all this great protein and nutrients only requires one ingredient. Whereas so many of these protein bars or powders require so many ingredients just to have the same amount of protein as beef, while not being nearly as digestible as a plain beef burger patty could be. So I think something really important is, like I talked about, on social media, making sure we promote beef from that angle. Talk about how it's a complete protein, how it can help people from any age. You're really making sure we show how it only takes one ingredient to have this many nutrients like vitamin B12, zinc, and iron that a lot of these plant-based proteins don't also have. It is making sure we show how beef is truly superior, and it's not just another protein option that people could choose but may be more expensive compared to a protein powder. So I think making sure we market online, as well as talking to doctors and making sure that myself, as a beef advocate, talks to people in my local high school, which has become really urban recently. Just making sure that I do my part in promoting beef, as well as a whole, our industry, promoting the nutritional value, something I think would be really beneficial.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
No,
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Hello. Hi. We're ready whenever you are.
Have you ever passed through those vast fields full of tall green grass? Well, if you live in the Brookshire Katy Prairie or community, you might be passing rice fields. And these fields may be providing the rice that you may be eating in your next meal. Good afternoon, judges. My name is Rayleigh Hackey, and I am here today not only to advocate for the rice industry, but the long-lasting tradition it's had within my community. Surrounded by rice fields, my high school currently sits on an old rice farm, and much of our community is still rice land. Local rice farmer Wayne England primarily cultivates white, long-grain rice. Recently featured in the Houston Chronicles, England discusses the importance of rice and its value to our world. And personally, I couldn't agree more. Mr. England's family has grown long-grain rice in Brookshire since the early 1940s, when his uncle bought the land and planted his first seeds. Through generations, rice has remained an important value, just as it has with Mr. England's family. Did you know that rice is a widely used commodity, and Texas is actually one of the top 5 states in the United States to grow rice, with the Brookshire Katy Prairie once being the largest producer of rice in the world. Me personally, I couldn't imagine my life without rice. I guess that's why 80% of the rice that we eat grows right here in the United States. Texas alone produces 7% of our nation's rice. And while that may not sound like a lot, that means Texas still accounts for 1.2 million pounds of rice annually. Typically, Texas produces nearly 225,000 acres of high-quality, long-grain rice for domestic and export markets, producing $145 million for farmers and generating over $480 million for Texas. In 1970, Katy area rice farmers set a record by harvesting 1 million barrels of rice in just 30 days. Now that's a lot of rice. It all started in 1853, when the first large acreage cultivation was grown by William Goyens. Since then, farmers have navigated their way through the ups and downs of rice farming, working to get the most quantity and the best quality in all aspects of the industry. From finding new sustainable hybrids and methods, to sowing the seeds and packaging them, to finally transporting the rice. Now, let me not stay in the history for too long. My next stop is production. The rice growing process starts with the rice plants found in your local rice field. Just one seed of rice can result in over 3,000 grains. Most cultivars of rice require between 105 and 150 days from sowing to harvest, leaving farmers like Mr. England with the availability to do 2 crop rotations a year, starting with the spring planting. Traditional farming needs 800 gallons of water to produce 3 pounds of rice. The crop requires flooded soil for its growth, as it suppresses weed growth and increases the uptake of nutrients for better yield. Oftentimes, rice is seeded aerially in flooded fields.
Rice farmers like to practice conservation tillage, making rice the crop with the lowest soil erosion. Now, that does seem like a lot of water, but over the past 30 years, farmers have reduced the water needed to grow rice by over 52%. They have achieved this by collecting rainwater or field runoff through sustainable irrigation systems. After rice is grown, it is harvested, dried, and transported in grain trucks, such as the ones found at your local rice mill, where they are whole, polished, and coated in vitamins. From there, milling companies package the rice on location, and it is sent out to stores near you. Production isn't the only complex thing about rice. It's also a complex carb. As a complex carb, rice is one of the primary sources of energy for over half the world's population. The average American actually consumes more than 26 pounds of rice a year, and most don't even realize it. But why do we eat so much rice? Rice is one of the largest sources of carbohydrates, which is the body's main fuel source. This means that it can play a vital role against malnutrition. But rice isn't just a grain with great benefits, it's also one of the most sustainable crops. Now that we've made a stop, now that we know how rice is grown, its sustainability, what it requires, and its benefits, we're left with one question. Why is all of this important? Rice is so much more than a food source. It's a way of life, deeply rooted in culture, community, and tradition. The U.S. rice industry contributes more than $34 billion to the U.S. economy, and considering that agriculture in general contributes $1.2 trillion, it's easy to see that rice is one of the largest supply sources of our economy. And let's not forget that the rice industry provides jobs for more than 125,000 people in the United States. And this number will continue to grow due to all of the new techniques that are being introduced into the growing process. Scientists, farmers, engineers, and so many more would have a wide array of jobs just waiting for them. Rice fields also provide critical habitat for wildlife that would cost more than $3.4 billion to replicate. So that rice field that you love to sit in and watch for doves, duck, and deer not only help you get your next shot, but also help provide a stable ecosystem for many different animals to thrive in. Rice is also a beacon of stability in volatile agricultural markets, with eggs, beef, and other high-priced commodities. With feed prices on the rise, rice is even used in the consumption of animal feed. As we come to the end of our journey here in the rice field, it's easy to see how rice is such a crucial crop to our economy, nourishment, and lifestyle. From the farm gate to our dinner plates, rice serves as the backbone to our world's way of life. Today, we honor our past, celebrate the present, and look forward to the future. Thank you, judges. I now stand ready for questions.
In Texas, where does rice fit into our agricultural economics and its benefit to our state?
So, like I had mentioned in my speech, we are one of the top 5 states in the United States to grow rice because of the texture of soil that we have and the amount of rain that we get each year. Normally during the summer, we hit a really long dry period, and so that lets the ground reset for the next fall where it becomes really rainy like it is right now. And so Texas is actually really producing off of how our weather is uncontrollable. And so we are able to produce more rice than some of the other states. But since other states have a lot more land, they are able to produce more rice than we are here in Texas.
Where does it fall, like within the, I guess, commodity kind of production related to Texas? Or like within the agricultural commodity, where is rice on that scale? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It's around like more towards the top, but also kind of in the middle because we are really increasing on urbanization. That level is just dropping daily. And I actually got to talk to our head director at our mill that they just opened in Brookshire, our new mill. And she was telling me how we as a group, as a school, have to really get out and advocate for rice because it is slowly dropping. We currently have about, I want to say around 3,000 new homes coming into my county alone. And so that's really drawing a big impact on our rice land that we have. they actually just sold the rice land in front of my high school to be built as a new subdivision. And so not only is that happening, but now our school is currently too small for our population that we have coming in. So they're having to build us a new high school. So that's only going to tear into more of our Preston's rice land. Sorry.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, I'm honest.
All right, congratulations on making it to finals.
Thank you.
We will keep your time and ask you some questions when you're done. So I'll start the time whenever you get started.
Right. A 2019 survey by Label Insight found that 53% of consumers feel misled by food labels, while 63% prioritize transparency when deciding what to buy. Good afternoon. My name is Allison Mitchell of the Dawson FFA, and these statistics reveal a troubling disconnect between the information consumers want and the tactics companies use. Despite our country's best efforts to ensure food safety and honesty, deceptive labeling practices exploit consumer trust and hurt agricultural producers. At first glance, labels like non-GMO and all natural seem harmless, even helpful. But in reality, these labels create unnecessary confusion, drive up costs, and hurt small producers who struggle to meet trendy demands. It's time to take a closer look at how we got here, how these practices affect us, and what we can do to restore transparency and fairness to the marketplace. The concern over food safety and labeling stretches back to the early 20th century. In 1906, Upton Sinclair's novel, The Jungle, exposed unsanitary conditions in meatpacking plants, leading to the first federal food safety laws. By 1938, public outrage over incidents like the elixir sulfanilamide tragedy, which killed 107 people, led to stricter regulations on food and drug labeling. Today, the FDA, or Food and Drug Administration, and the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, oversee most food labels, categorizing them into 4 main types: nutrition labels, food quality labels, organic food labels, and animal welfare labels. The USDA's involvement began in 1946 with the Agricultural Marketing Act, which helped set the stage for modern food quality and safety standards. Labels like USDA Prime and Certified Organic are now commonly seen, but these certifications come at a cost to producers. Furthermore, evolving consumer demands have led to an additional influx of labels, many of which create unnecessary complexity. Some food labels go beyond informing consumers. They exploit their lack of knowledge. For example, the label "No Hormones Added" appears on pork and poultry products, despite the fact that administering hormones to these animals is illegal in the United States. This label creates the false impression that other brands might use hormones. Another example would be the label "non-GMO" appearing on orange juice, but since oranges are not genetically modified crops, this label is completely unnecessary, yet it tricks consumers into paying more. And gluten-free water? Perhaps the most absurd example, this label exploits consumer fears while stating the obvious. Marketing agencies use these tactics to imply superiority, even when there's no actual difference between products. Farmers who don't adopt these practices often see lower sales, while consumers pay more for misleading claims. These trends have a measurable impact on consumer behavior. A Nielsen survey showed that 64% of shoppers are willing to pay more for a product with a recognizable health-related claim, even when those claims are redundant or meaningless. This trend puts undue pressure on producers who are compelled to adopt costly certifications just to stay competitive. Is this wrong? Technically, these claims aren't false, but they are misleading. These practices may violate Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act, which prohibits deceptive acts and practices. Yet, enforcement remains inconsistent, leaving producers and consumers stuck in an unfair system. In contrast to the US, however,
the European Union has stricter labeling regulations. For instance, terms like organic and natural must meet precise, enforceable definitions. This transparency builds consumer trust and levels the playing field for producers. EU regulations also prohibit certain marketing claims outright if they cannot be substantiated. For example, if a product is labeled as health enhancing, it must have proven benefits backed by scientific evidence. In the US, however, many such claims are loosely regulated, allowing companies to capitalize on vague language. Additionally, many certifications come with annual inspections and audits, further straining limited resources. For consumers, misleading claims often leads to overpaying. Studies show that products with labels like non-GMO and all natural can cost 25 to 50% more, even when they're identical to conventional alternatives. This creates a lose-lose situation where trust is eroded and honest farmers are penalized. Moreover, the economic ripple effect can be seen throughout the rural community. When small farms struggle to meet labeling demands, they often consolidate or sell their operations, reducing local economic activity. This trend is particularly harmful in agricultural regions where farming is a primary economic driver. To address these issues, we must push for reforms that prioritize honesty and fairness. Here's how. Define terms clearly. Labels like organic and natural must meet enforceable, standardized definitions. Enhance oversight. Create a third-party auditing system modeled after the EU to prevent deceptive claims. Educate the public. Launch campaigns to teach consumers what labels mean and how to make informed decisions. Support producers. Subsidize certification costs for small farms to help level the playing field and encourage honest labeling practices. These steps will help create a more transparent food system, benefiting both producers and consumers. By implementing these changes, we can ensure that food labeling serves its intended purpose, providing accurate and trustworthy information to consumers. It's time to restore transparency and fairness to our food system. Misleading claims undermine consumer confidence and penalize honest farmers. By advocating for reform, we can ensure that food labeling reflects trust, not tactics. Together, we can create a marketplace where transparency reigns, trust thrives, and agriculture continues to feed the world. Thank you.
Well done, Allison.
Thank you.
Should we start?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. My first question for you, you did a great job. As in your solutions towards the end, one of your recommendations is that we educate consumers. So my question is, how would you recommend that maybe the USDA, FDA, Department of Ag, how would you recommend that they educate consumers about these transparency?
I know when I was little, I watched a lot of TV, specifically PBS Kids, but also Disney and Nickelodeon. I feel like the first step to educating the public is to get to children, because that is who will shape our future and shape our world. So by putting these campaigns in PBS Kids or Disney or Nickelodeon or on YouTube, it will influence children to help advocate for these claims to be eradicated.
Okay, so at the end, we were kind of talking about how the honest farmer is kind of the one that gets hurt in this situation. But we also talked about labels, let's say like in chicken says no hormones, when we all know, or us in ag know that there isn't hormones in chicken. What is the limiting factor to just, if I'm one of those honest farmers, from putting that label on mine just to stay competitive?
It's the money. To get these certifications, it's very costly, especially for smaller farms who barely get by month to month just from their crops. So when bigger companies and farms who put their animals at risk and do these things, they are bigger, they have more money. And so they get to be the ones who decide we're going to put this label on here and we're going to charge more for these chickens, charge more for this orange juice, for this water, and we're going to create a monopoly where small farms will whittle down until there are no more, and the big boys will just stay on top.
Okay. So you mentioned that the EU's they've done a good job of defining these claims and enforcing them. From maybe your research, maybe your opinion, why do you think the U.S. is not quite up to speed with maybe the European Union?
So the European Union just put in a new law that's taking place now and will be finalized in 2028 called the CRSD, where they have third-party auditors, so not people who work for big corporations, but also not people who work directly for the government, who will go to these corporations and to other farms to look at their organic, their chickens, their pigs, their crops, and they will go and see if they are actually meeting these labels and if the labels they are putting on their food, if they are redundant or meaningless. And so the US doesn't have that to an extent. Like, we have Article 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act, but no one really does anything about it. It was put into place and then it was ignored. And so we could definitely reflect on Europe's CRSD law to help make the US better at food production.
One last question for you. So right now our market, I know you talked a little bit about education, but our market is very much under the assumption of these current food labels, our general consumer. If I as a consumer only like to buy that non-GMO orange juice and you remove that label, what impact on citrus farmers in general do you see having if that label is no longer there and that's what the customer is expecting?
I feel as though if we're not educated, if we don't push for launching campaigns to help educate other people and we just take the label off of it, if we say there's no more non-GMO on orange juice things for no reason, I believe that it would definitely hurt the orange juice, the citrus farming industry, just because that's what consumers look out for and that's what they want to see and want to trust.
You good?
Good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison. Good job.
Hey.
Hi.
All right. Congratulations on making it to the finals.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll be keeping your time today, and at the end, when you're done, we'll have a couple of questions for you, but we'll start your time whenever you get started.
Let's do that. Just a bit. Picture this. You're cutting into a juicy, medium rare steak. The grill marks are perfect, and you can almost hear the sizzle still echoing from the pan. But while you're focused on that delicious bite, something else is happening in the background. Powerful corporations are seeking to control every aspect of how that steak got to your plate. From the pasture where the cow grazed, to the feedlot where it was fattened, to the plant where it was processed, and finally to the grocery store cooler. All of it could soon be managed by one company. This process, called vertical integration, is at the center of one of the biggest debates in the beef industry today. Good afternoon. My name is Rylan Freck, and I am from the Canyon New Braunfels FFA chapter. And today, I'm going to talk to you about vertical integration in the beef industry, what it is, why it's controversial, and how it directly impacts Texas ranchers and consumers like you and me. So let's start with the basics. What does vertical integration actually mean? At its core, vertical integration is when one company combines multiple steps of production, everything from raising cattle to feed to processing to distribution, all under one roof.
Instead of simply buying beef from packers like Tyson or Cargill, companies like Walmart want to manage the entire supply chain themselves. On the surface, this sounds efficient, maybe even smart. Prices for some cuts of beef have already dropped because retailers have been able to streamline their supply chain. But when one company gets that much control, what happens to the rancher who has always been able to bargain, compete, and choose how to sell? Does he get a fair stake, or does he lose his independence, one contract at a time? That's where the controversy begins. For supporters, integration offers a lifeline in a tough market. Ranchers have always faced uncertainty, from floods and droughts to rising feed costs and international trade disputes. According to the USDA Economic Research Service, these changes can cause huge swings in cattle prices, and integration can help smooth out those risks. Let's consider the tragic Kerrville floods. When heavy rains washed out pastures and disrupted this hill country supply chain. Ranchers without steady buyers lost income overnight, but operations tied into a more vertically integrated system had contracts that helped keep them afloat. For those families, integration wasn't just a business decision, it was survival. But here's the flip side. As history shows, consolidation often goes too far. The United States Department of Justice reports that just 4 companies, Tyson, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef, already control more than 90% of beef packing within the United States. When one company gets that much power, what happens to competition? What happens to choice, both for ranchers and consumers? Walmart's entry could break up that dominance by supporting rancher-led initiatives like sustainable beef, or it could tighten the grip of consolidation and push out smaller processors. And this isn't just a beef issue. Across agriculture, companies are following the same model. The Plains Cotton Cooperative Association vertically integrates the production, storage, and marketing to keep Texas cotton competitive. And Texas Gold Shrimp manages everything from harvesting in the Gulf to processing in the plant. These examples show us that agriculture is shifting into a new era, one where the line between retailers and producers blurs, and the question becomes less about how food is sold and more about who controls it. This shift raises difficult questions for Texas ranchers, questions about identity, independence, and survival. How will you protect a family tradition when powerful corporations are rewriting the rules of the marketplace? For some, those questions are deeply personal. The Flanagan Ranch in Llano County has been raising cattle for decades, but with more beef flowing through corporate-controlled supply chains, they struggle to find market space unless they agree to restrictive contracts. And closer to home, the Schumann family farms in Comal County face the same challenge. For years, the Schumanns have been a backbone of our local beef economy, raising cattle and selling into community markets. Their livelihood is built on independence, feeding their neighbors and sustaining the community. But integration often forces hard choices. Do they risk losing buyers to maintain their independence, or do they sign contracts that guarantee stability, but slowly take away the very independence that defines them? So, where does this leave us? For consumers, it may mean cheaper steaks and more consistent beef within grocery stores. But for Texas ranchers, it's a gamble. One that could promise stability in times of disaster, but also introduce the risk of being swallowed up by corporate control. And for Texas rural communities, this touches something far deeper. Because behind every steak is a story of families who rise before dawn, of the rancher who weathers floods and droughts, and of family traditions passed from one generation to the next. Vertical integration is reshaping these stories right now in real time. So the question isn't whether vertical integration will shape the future of the beef industry. Evidence shows it already has. The real question is whether it will be used to strengthen family operations or weaken them under corporate power. As retailers like Walmart expand, they are redefining not only how beef gets from pasture to plate, but also the survival of rural economies and families' traditions. If we want Texas ranchers to have a fair stake in their future, then we must pay attention now before the odds are cooked too well done against them. Thank you.
All right. So my first question is, as you know, in Texas, with beef producers, our biggest threat right now is the screwworm that is quickly approaching us. How do you see that impact in relation to the vertical integration and the contracts that are being created?
Yes, ma'am. So in the United States, one thing that is super important to us is food security. And we see that these companies that are signing contracts have clauses specifically now that have to do with the pedigree of the cattle and where they're getting the cattle from, how the cattle is raised, and it's much more in detail than it has been in the past. We're seeing that with this threat to our beef economy growing closer and closer to the border, we're seeing these contracts become much more specific and the requirement for record keeping specifically and in the ranching operation.
So, sorry, I'm going to follow up on it. So are they starting to keep Texas out of those contracts? Is that what you're alluding to?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am. It's that the ranchers that are signing these contracts just must be uber specific in their record keeping and very vigilant in where they're getting their cattle from and things like that, not excluding cattle or Texas cattle specifically. Gotcha.
So my question is, you mentioned like the packers and I think retailers, those are kind of the industries that are vertically integrating, correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's say that those are obviously your downstream, I'd say closer to consumer sector of the industry, and then you have your upstream, which are more producers, right? What kind of market, what are the conditions that maybe favor the downstream, like Tyson and Walmart put power in their hands, and what are maybe some factors that could put power back into the producer's hands?
Yes, sir. So obviously with those big companies, convenience is important. It's easy to go to Walmart and buy your steak, and it's much harder to find a local market or find a cattle operation locally. It's easier to go to those big box stores that sell the beef from Tyson and Cargill. So they definitely have convenience on their side. However, there is a really, really interesting operation in Amarillo that is entirely run by producers. So these corporations are able to not only voice the needs of the producers, but also create more convenience for the producers in that market.
A lot of agriculture, especially in, let's say, the row crop side, is very cooperative based. You mentioned Plains Cooperative, that's a good example. Do you see the beef industry banding together to create a more cooperative based model to try and combat some of these, or how do you see co-ops playing a role in this?
Yes, ma'am. So that Amarillo Co-op is doing great work. They're advocating for local Texas beef, and they're getting the word out there that we need to support processors. And also, Walmart does support a sustainable beef plant, which is entirely run by producers. So it's just very important that we advocate for those local producers. And while I don't necessarily see the entirety of the beef industry being producer-led, because there is some corporate necessity within the industry, I do see that there is a large piece of the puzzle that is missing because the producers are not being able to voice their true opinions and their needs.
Yeah, I also want to follow up on that. So what do you think are the biggest obstacles that are maybe other than the giant packers and retailers? What are some of the other obstacles that are affecting producers as they try to, join these co-ops or coalitions like the Packing Plate Mission Amarillo? What are some of those challenges?
So obviously Texas beef as a whole has a lot of issues right now that we're trying to face. There's the New World screwworm that's coming up from South America, and then also the beef that's being imported from Argentina. The producers locally are struggling with that because it's almost undercutting. These big packers are able to buy cheaper beef from elsewhere and bring it into the country, which kind of undercuts the local producer.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Great job.
Next event, we're ready.
Hey, how are you doing today? My name's Josh Robert. Nice to meet you.
Miles, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Miles. Nice to meet you.
All right, congratulations on making it to the finals.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll be keeping your time today. When you're done, we'll have a couple of questions for you, but we'll start your time whenever you get started.
All right, perfect. All right. Think about walking into a grocery store, right? You see rows of strawberries, tomatoes, and piles of fresh vegetables. But what if that pile of vegetables never reached its destination? Or what if those strawberries and tomatoes were left in the field to rot and suddenly food prices doubled overnight? You might be thinking, how could that even happen? Well, what if I told you that it wasn't due to drought or a lack of land or even technology, but rather it was due to a shortage of the people needed to harvest our crops? See, the simple truth is that American farmers often struggle to find enough seasonal labor to harvest their crops. That is why good agricultural labor policy matters. Because good labor policy affects all of us. Policy shapes how farmers hire and maintain workers to tend to their crops seasonally, stay profitable, and continue feeding our country. But unfortunately, many of the current policies in place, they fail to meet the needs of farmers, specifically in hiring and maintaining that legal, consistent, and affordable workforce. Let's take a look at 3 policy challenges that farmers are currently facing. First, it's wage competition. According to a 2020 study on labor in the food supply chain, researchers found that on average, American citizens are willing to work for $23.50 an hour. That's nearly 70% more than the average undocumented worker's hourly wage of just $14 an hour. Now, not only is this 70% difficult to overcome, it makes it nearly impossible to attract documented workers to these labor-intensive seasonal jobs. So in many cases, farmers turn to undocumented labor. As you can imagine, that comes at a cost. They risk losing their workforce and facing hefty penalties and fines for just hiring them in the first place. It's just a lose-lose situation. The second challenge is visa limitations. Currently, the United States Department of Homeland Security allows H-2A employers to extend the visa by up to 1 year at a time by filing an I-129 petition. However, the H-2A visa is limited to a maximum of 3 consecutive years, after which the employee must remain outside of the United States for a minimum of 3 consecutive months before returning under the same program. I mean, for farmers, this just creates instability. I mean, just as a worker becomes trained and effective, they leave. Lastly, the third challenge. It's the complicated visa application process. The current process for applying for H-2A workers is complex and time-consuming. I mean, first farmers have to apply at least 60 days before the work is needed, yet this process can take well over 100 days due to administrative delays. Each step of the process requires working with multiple government agencies, including the United States Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Labor, and the State Department. Each department requires its own separate forms, fees, and approvals, so it's not uncommon for filing costs to exceed $2,000 per filing. It's clear to see how this process is inefficient, expensive, and discouraging. I mean, especially for those smaller operations just trying to turn a profit in an already challenging market. And to be clear, these challenges affect all farmers and are in need of real solutions that can make an impact. The good news is there are solutions. Let's focus on 3. First, let's reintroduce and pass the Citizenship for Essential Workers Act. The Citizenship for Essential Workers Act, or CEWA, is a bill that's currently stalled out in Congress. but we could reintroduce and pass this piece of legislation because the CEWA introduces a legal pathway to citizenship for undocumented workers currently employed in the United States. It recognizes that these men and women are valuable and have already proven themselves. More than 250,000 agricultural workers come into the United States each year under programs like the H-2A visa, right? And as I mentioned earlier, the process for applying for these workers is an administrative nightmare. I mean, farmers are left with the process of hiring and training new workers season after season, not to mention filing the proper paperwork just to keep them on site. But if we allow for longer stay, if the CEWA was passed, farmers could retain these skilled workers for multiple growing seasons. And that means that we're strengthening both our agricultural system and our food supply. The second solution is to extend visa durations. If we could just extend visa durations from 3 years to 10, we could simplify the legal hiring process and reduce the paperwork. Now, more than 250,000 agricultural workers come to the United States each year under programs like the H-2A visa, and it's not uncommon for this paperwork to exceed 75 pages per worker, and it creates an insane process for these farmers. I mean, but if we allow for these longer stays, the farmers have to go through less paperwork, less processes, leading to a higher profitability because they can focus on their work versus the administrative process. Lastly, let's reform the H-2A visa. The H-2A visa system, or the Farm Work Modernization Act, introduces an online portal that simplifies the legal hiring process for farmers. Specifically, this would make it so the legal hiring process is easier and more streamlined. It strengthens our agricultural system, it strengthens our food supply, and it strengthens our workforce. See, the truth is that strong agricultural labor policy is the foundation that allows for American farms and the families that depend on them to thrive. So, if we reintroduce the CEWA, extend visa durations, and simplify the legal hiring process, we can build a system that supports effective, profitable, and productive farms. Because when policy fails, food prices go up, crops go unharvested, and farms lose workers. But when policy works, everyone wins. So by tackling these labor policies, we're not just protecting our food supply. We're planting the seed for a thriving agricultural future, not just for today, but for generations to come. Thank you.
Me go?
Go ahead.
Great job, Joshua. My first question for you is you mentioned with the H-2A visa program, there's a lot of paperwork that's involved. Could you expand just a little bit on that process, what it looks like from you realize you need an employee then until that employee shows up?
Yeah, for sure. So the process all starts by going to the there's a couple ways. More specifically, you go to the United States Department of Homeland Security. They have paperwork on their website where you go through. It's about 35 pages just on the Homeland Security website. It involves how many papers you're applying, or how many people you're applying for, or who you're specifically looking for, and it all comes with different costs associated with it. I mean, specifically, according to the USDA's kind of like basic breakdown of everything, bringing workers back that have already left costs you an additional like $650 per worker. So it creates an insane gap. Additionally, you kind of go down to the next form filing place, which is going to be the Department of Labor, where you not only send what you took from the Department of Homeland Security and send it to them, You also have additional, I believe, 17 forms to fill out. And then if that gets approved, it comes back to you. And then you add more to it from the State Department. And you send it right back again. And if you miss a singular date or time, it all gets messed up. And that's why it usually takes between 60 and 70 days. That's why these applications have to be submitted before that. But it usually takes much longer because of these mistakes or different issues that come along with it.
Can I ask a follow-up? Go ahead. Does the farmer have any say in the person that ends up coming to their operation, or is it?
So yes and no. If they're asking specifically for a person, let's say they had someone from 3-2 or that just left and they want them back, they can add specific names, right? Like I said, it costs a good chunk of money to get specific people back and to create specific visas for them. But other than that, it's kind of random, but it's also not. The different countries that we're pulling from for H-2A visas have different. There's actually private companies in those places that specifically pull and people that have applications, and you could send the names and everything, and then you have to pay for transportation and housing, and then they get brought over to the United States. But it can take a really long time. It's not ideal.
Do you believe that the design of the system where it's challenging, it's expensive, all of these things are to incentivize using documented United States workers, because that pay difference and what they're demanding, does the cost to get those H-2A workers is it really worth it?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. Yes, that is originally how it was created. It was created so that American workers could have these jobs first. But what we're finding recently, specifically in the last 20 to 35 years, American workers do not want these hard labor jobs that are seasonal and are usually lower paying. That's what keeps our grocery costs lower, is that they're paid a little bit less. So these costs associated with the pay gaps and everything are partially kind of brought together specifically because you do have to provide housing and everything like that. But currently the way that everything works, it's not helping the farmer at all. These gaps and these like different barriers that are meant to support American workers are harming American farmers because they can't find American workers. And the only place they can go is H-2A workers. But because that process is so complicated, the only place they have left to turn is the undocumented workers. And that's where our issue really comes into play. Because, 40% of our crop workers are undocumented. And that is a large majority of the percentage. Because then another 20% is documented, foreign born, and the other 30% roughly 40% is actually United States born citizens. So the pay gaps and the barriers that are in place right now are just so ineffective. So good policy, bringing that in, is so important.
Go for it. Yeah.
So our geopolitical climate's pretty hot right now. I think we can all agree on that, no matter what side you stand on. And that's both an immigration policy as well as farm policy. We haven't had a farm bill in a really long time. So what can we even do to try and fix this when the climate's already so hot and this is probably not the first thing on their mind?
Yeah, that's really important. Over the last however many years that we've been fighting these issues, we've just been kicking the can down the road. We've been trying to throw bandages over gaping wounds that are draining our small businesses and farms in America. What I proposed specifically in my speech, such as like the Farm Bill or the CEWA, are potential and bipartisan supported bills. Specifically the Farmer Modernization Act was recently in Congress and still in Congress. It is just currently in a committee in the House. So if we push our senators and we push our representatives to make a long-lasting, sustainable change, especially for the backbone of America, which is small businesses and farmers, we can make a difference just as regular people ourselves. I think.
I'll do one. It's on the top of my head. So you said that the CEWA leads, is it ineffective or is it?
This
still
is stalled in
still
Congress.
Congress
Yeah.
right now? You said it leads to citizenship.
Yes.
So what's to say that as soon as maybe one of these individuals, once they get their citizenship, who's to say that they're on to lead these operations? Do they still need to stay in agriculture to maintain their citizenship, or are they free to do whatever they want?
Yeah, so the process of the path of citizenship, it's a very long process.
Right.
In reality, it is to create a legal way for these immigrants to stay in America. And the specific pathway in the citizenship bill is a 10-year commitment to being in American agriculture, right? And so whether they leave or stay, it creates a stable workforce with the pathway to citizenship. And in reality, if they're here that long and they're doing one job, we create a specialty. And once they become documented, their pay can increase and they can improve the lives of their families. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
We have a couple of new people in the room, so just a reminder to please keep your phones on silent, stay off your phones while the speaker is speaking, and remain quiet. But first speaker, congratulations on making it to the finals.
Thank you.
I'll be keeping your time today, and then when we're done, we'll ask you a couple of questions, but I'll get your time started whenever you're ready.
Turn on your aviation minds. We're going for a spin in Top Gun. Here we are watching the one and only Maverick and Goose as they do a famous flyby. However, they are becoming harder to see. They must have just flown into the vibrant orange sunset. But wait, it's only 4 o'clock. How could there be a sunset? Unless it's explosions! Here come the enemy planes at 2, 5, 9 o'clock. They got him. They're closing in on him, closing fast. Maverick and Goose break. They made it. That was a miracle, but they're running on empty. Next stop, gasoline. As the planes come screeching to a stop, the workers anxiously run out to fill up the tanks. I read on the side, made with beef? Wait. That's not how the movie goes. But what if gasoline really was made with beef? You are telling me I can eat a McDonald's Big Mac and put my leftovers into that airplane? I mean, that is the perfect definition of hamburger helper. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back. You're probably wondering, how does any of this have anything to do with why I'm standing before you today? Good afternoon, my name is Katie Sears of the Peaster FFA chapter. And as a meat science enthusiast, my recent studies show an innovation that involves using beef byproducts, such as beef fat or tallow, as an ingredient, and you guessed it, jet fuel. Which brings us to today's question. How can rendered beef products play a role in the aviation industry? To fully answer this, we must take a look at our 3 areas of analysis. First, how does the aviation industry currently source and produce their own jet fuel? Second, how can rendered beef products be turned into aviation fuel? And finally, what are the benefits and limitations of this technology? Let's take a look at our first area of analysis. How does the aviation industry currently source and produce their own jet fuel? Well, according to the CDC, jet fuels are produced by blending and refining several crude oil products, such as naphtha, gasoline, and kerosene, to meet specific military and commercial standards. Carefully crafted with additives, jet fuel will not freeze at low temperatures or ignite at high temperatures. However, this does require the mining of fossil fuels, which has been known to harm our environment. Scientists have been looking for ways to make safe but sustainable jet fuel. This is where beef tallow comes in. Not only have scientists found that beef tallow can be used as a source of aviation fuel, but they've also reported on its environmental benefits. According to the Environmental and Energy Study Institute, carbon dioxide is the largest component of all aircraft emissions. accounting for approximately 70% of all exhaust. This plays a considerable role in the greenhouse gas emissions effect. It is also reported that the aviation industry currently holds up to 9% of all global emissions. With beef tallow being used as a source of aviation fuel, all aviation-related emissions would decrease by 25%. Although it isn't eliminated completely, any strides towards protecting our environment should be seen as justifiable. Don't you agree? Yes, I know it sounds crazy that the same piece of fat that is within your favorite prime rib steak can also be flying at a maximum altitude of 42,000 feet in the air. From the ground to the air, the future of agriculture is soaring with innovation. But how does it work? Engineers use high water pressures and high temperatures to strip the free fatty acid from the oils and fats from the slaughtered animals. Next, the free fatty acids are placed into a reactor to remove the carbon dioxide. Depending on the type of livestock species being used, the engineers are left with 15 to 17 hydrocarbons. Regardless of the type of fat being used, these first few steps will always remain the same. The remaining steps involve the engineers breaking up the hydrocarbons and changing their physical and chemical characteristics to match the carbon content of any fuel we would like to make. In simpler terms, waste fat from animals are turned into an oil, using a rendering process and separated into its purest components to be used in the production of aviation fuel. Companies like United Airlines have already made strong investments in this new technology by purchasing over 30 million gallons of renewable jet fuel just this year, followed by FedEx and Southwest Airlines with 15 million gallons purchased. The public market is making strong investments in this new technology, causing it to catch fire across the nation. Who knew that the cattle we see in pastures on the side of the road or at the San Antonio Livestock Show would soon be up in the ranks as one of the most innovative ideas in aviation history? With all this talk about how the fuel works, let's take a look at our final area of analysis, the benefits and limitations of this technology. In December of 2025, the regular price of jet fuel was $2.10 per gallon. This renewable jet fuel is slightly more expensive, however, 25% of all aviation-related carbon emissions would decrease if it is used. According to Dr. William Roberts, professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering at NC State, this new fuel cuts carbon outputs and burns cleaner than regular fuels made today. Many fuels made today are made with ethanol, which comes directly from corn, causing the fuel industry to compete with food and livestock feeds. With corn being the most diversely used crop in the nation, it becomes necessary to look for products and industries that are not as competitive. This is where beef tallow comes into play. With beef tallow, livestock that ranchers would typically cull can now be used in the production of aviation fuel instead. This strategy is 30% less expensive than typical options such as corn or canola oil. If you're an agriculturalist, you've definitely heard the saying that we like to use everything but the moo. When beef cattle are slaughtered, 99% of the animal is used for meat and other byproducts. With this new technology, processors are able to implement a more diverse way to use the whole slaughter animal and therefore prevent animal waste. However, it does become challenging when using these fats as a form of biodiesel because they often contain contaminants that have to be removed before they can be used in an engine. Going along in challenges, this new fuel adds $1.10 to the current price of aviation fuel. With all of this in mind, it is important that producers and aviation experts both have a good understanding of how this fuel works before deciding if the benefits truly outweigh the cost. As you can see, this new technology has proven to be successful, but it has its obvious benefits and drawbacks. By having a better understanding of how aviation fuel is currently made, how rendered beef products can be turned into aviation fuel, and the benefits and limitations of this technology, it is evident that we as agriculturalists need to take a better look at where our industry is taking us. The agriculture industry continues to achieve at high levels, where the saying the cow jumped over the moon comes true. Well, kind of. We may not be able to literally pack our fuel tanks with the McDonald's McRib. But the idea that livestock can play a role in reducing aviation global emissions is a huge discovery that has tremendous potential in protecting our precious environment. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, as an agriculturalist, sounds like a great idea. But whenever we think of fossil fuels and we think of the way current jet fuel is made, corn for ethanol and corn for food are two very different types of corn. Those are not the same, being produced the same, they're not the same producers. So are we just harming one ag industry to help the other? Are we just hurting corn producers by getting rid of corn from ethanol or ethanol from corn by adding in this beef tallow?
So this really wouldn't hurt the industry that is making corn specifically for, airplanes and jet fuel and such. This is strictly an additive. So it's an additive with about 45 to 50% to each gallon of jet fuel. So it wouldn't completely replace this whole industry. It would just add another layer that can also help our environment and create a whole nother industry in the agriculture aspect.
So from the financial aspect, if it's basically the same components with this additional additive that does make it cleaner, how do we convince people to spend this much more in jet fuel? Because jet fuel is already one of the most expensive fuels out there to be produced. It's hard to produce. How do we justify making it more expensive by adding just another additive?
So jet fuel in recent years has lowered a little bit, but these big companies are really the people we're targeting, right? So companies like United and Southwest, who are billion-dollar companies, and they can now use this as a marketing tactic, like Southwest is completely moved over to using this new fuel. So they can tell their consumers, their people getting on their airplanes, every time you step foot on a Southwest airplane, you're helping our environment. So, that's more product for them. They're getting more business from people like us who are like, totally, I want to go on a plane that helps the environment. Why don't we all get on Southwest? So then they can have more money from these ticket sales to spend on this gasoline.
Follow up on this one. Also with like other benefits, there are some other avenues, like maybe even the carbon credit system. Have you looked into that much, or do you know how that works and plays into this at all?
I don't know exactly. There isn't a ton of research really on this new product because it started in 2007. That's when the idea was born, and it became used in airplanes in 2016. So, there's not a ton of research on everything about carbon emissions and, price, tax dollars, stuff like that, where it could be more long-term research. And so I have not specifically studied that yet.
To kind of go back a little bit more towards the fossil fuels, if this is an additive, what are we getting rid of?
We aren't technically getting rid of anything. It's just like, if you drive a diesel truck and you're going to put power service diesel product into my truck to keep it from freezing, right? Similar idea. I'm, flying this airplane. I'm going to put this new beef tallow additive into my airplane to make it burn cleaner. It's strictly an additive to help with your engine, to help with the environment, and to help with your company.
So you phrase this a lot with that the beef industry and maybe other livestock producers or even packing plants who sell their rendered tallow and everything. Those producers are going to benefit. Are there any other areas of agriculture that are going to could possibly benefit from this aviation fuel?
So, going back to the corn industry, the corn can now be used for more things in our community that we could use it for. So maybe rather than jet fuel, it can be more focused on cars or, go back to more just human consumption, whereas this beef that is just being completely wasted can now be used into this. And long term, I don't really know how it's going to affect, the moving around of our industry, but I definitely think it'll be a positive.
Okay, so do you know the other components that can go into this aviation fuel, or is it just beef tallow and corn products, or is there anything else out there that can wiggle its way in?
So as far as fat, they're doing research on pig fat, sheep fat, and goat fat. So that can go into there, but really the two main ones is corn and tallow currently.
And do you happen to know what the term SAF means, or it stands for?
No, sorry.
No. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, you. Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, it's kind of picturing aviation fuel. That's kind of the, it's thrown. That's kind of thrown around. They call it SAF. So
Oh, no, sir. Well,
it's all good. It's
learn
just
something new every day.
it's all
Thank
good.
you. Yes, sir.
Expecting that.